Hey guys, how you doing? Hopefully you're doing okay. I'm going to read through this full article here. There's a good chance that you're aware of this mass shooting in Chattanooga. If you are aware of this, if you've heard a news article or two, I'm perhaps not going to provide you with any further information. However, if you've not yet looked into this case, this situation, then allow me to read through this article for you. There is a link in the description. I'm going to read through the majority of the article. But as the article tells us here, 3 people were killed and at least 14 others were injured after gunshots rang out in Chattanooga, Tennessee, early Sunday morning, just before 2:45 a.m. Some of the victims were struck by bullets. There were seemingly multiple shooters. Others were struck and injured, and seemingly at least one person died after having been hit by fleeing vehicles. So, another mass shooting, and unfortunately, some of the injuries and at least one death has been caused by people panicking, trying to get the fuck out of there, which I cannot blame them for doing. And in that process, I guess arguably they've acted a little on the reckless side, and they've presumably run into other fleeing people. So it is a real shame. I don't think it's necessarily fair to blame those people that are just acting to save their own lives. I don't fully agree with myself there. I'm sure some blame is applicable. It's not right to drive recklessly, but certainly they should, they did so under extenuating circumstances for sure. But back to the article, police responded to reports of a shooting at a nightclub just before 2:45 a.m. Officers found multiple victims when they arrived, and they immediately began rendering medical aid. In all, 14 victims were shot, while 3 others were hit by vehicles attempting to flee the scene. Among the 3 deaths, 2 stemmed from gunshot wounds and 1 stemmed from injury sustained after the victim was struck by a vehicle. Police believe multiple shooters using several types of firearms were involved. No suspects are in custody. Police have yet to identify any potential suspects or victims. A motive for the shooting is unclear, but authorities believe the shooting was an isolated incident in which one or more of the victims were targeted. Okay, so I'm just going to throw in a couple of comments here at this point. This is very similar in my mind, or certainly it reminds me of the Sacramento shooting. When I read through the details of the Sacramento shooting, when I saw clips of the car or cars peeling past at high speed and what appeared to be firing indiscriminately into a crowd of people, I was, a couple of points I'll make here is I felt very confident that they had gotten away with it. If I recall correctly, a couple of days following the incident, the police hadn't had any suspects. My feeling was, oh shit, they got away with it. But thankfully, that turned around in regards to the Sacramento mass shooting, which happened 3 months ago. Is that right? Less than 3 months ago, maybe 2 and a bit months ago, I'd guess. The police did actually make multiple arrests. And if I understand correctly, I believe they identified that it was gang-related shooting, that even though the shootings appeared to be indiscriminate, the shooters were shooting at least one targeted person, but the shooters really didn't care if there were other collateral damage that also got hit by their gunfire. To me, this seems very similar. From what the police are saying, it seems like they shot indiscriminately at a group of people. Sorry, not quite indiscriminately. That they had targeted one or perhaps more specific people, but they were willing to shoot amongst a crowd. they are sick people, and I'm going to say that they're likely gang members. This is again a shooting outside of a nightclub, as it was with Sacramento in the early hours of the morning. And yeah, it seems reminiscent of the Sacramento shooting to me. We don't know the full details as yet. But another thing that I'll mention, which is mentioned by the article here, is that another shooting, major shooting, happened in Chattanooga last weekend. And I made a video in regards to this. And the description of what happened last weekend, which to be clear, seems to be completely unrelated, is what we are presuming, or what I presume, seems to be completely or largely unrelated to this incident which occurred on Sunday. But last week's mass shooting in Chattanooga was essentially two groups of youths had an altercation, and then at least one, I think perhaps a couple of people from one of the groups decided to shoot again at one person in particular within the other group. But of course, these people are in groups, they're in crowds, you know. So if you shoot at one person that is, you know, in a crowd of 30 other people, there's a high chance that other people are going to get hit. And I believe, if I recall, that's what happened last weekend. Other people did get hit. I can't remember it off the top of my head in regards to the number of deaths. So it tells us here, no victims died, 2 were critically injured. So Chattanooga does have a mass shooting problem right now. 2 mass shootings in 2 weekends. Chattanooga's mayor has vowed that he and the city council will spend time in the coming weeks to address gun violence, saying that they would treat this like the crisis that it is. The mayor himself is a gun owner and a lifelong hunter and marksman, and he says that he supports responsible gun ownership. Here's a quote from Chattanooga's mayor. Congress needs to do their jobs and pass common sense regulations that will help stop this nonsense. That doesn't mean taking guns away from responsible gun owners, but it does mean mandatory background checks and prohibiting high-capacity magazines that allow shooters to hurt dozens of people without even having to reload. So there we go. That's the mayor's take on things. I'll just comment on that. But, you know, it's just an opinion, my opinion, and largely uneducated. I never lived in America. I've lived in England and Australia. We don't have guns in either of these places. So my viewpoint is biased, of course, and it doesn't really have a full grasp on the situation, given that I've never lived in America. But I don't object to the words from the mayor here. The mayor supports gun usage, responsible gun ownership, as do I. But he does have some concerns. And personally, I feel, well, that's the right thing to have, some concerns about what's going on. Clearly, there is a problem. So clearly, whatever the system is presently is not ideal. Now, that doesn't mean throwing the baby out with the bathwater, doesn't mean scrapping gun ownership entirely. That doesn't mean that that's the only option or the best option. But I think making some changes is likely going to lead to improvements. Improvements being a lessening, a lowering of these mass shooting incidences, whether they're gang related or not. That would be my feeling. Does the mayor have the right answers? I don't know. But I certainly think he is right to present these as options for consideration by Congress, by the public as a whole. Mandatory background checks, yes. I don't see any argument as to why mandatory background checks should not be in place. I can't think of any argument. We do know that in society there are people that are a danger to themselves or a danger to others. It seems only sensible and reasonable for society as a whole to have fairly rigorous and perhaps fairly regular mandatory background checks Can't argue with that. So if you can be shown to be a criminal, if you can be shown to have mental health issues, or you've shown disturbing violent behavior in the past, okay, well, you know, you've lost your right to gun ownership. If you hadn't have done those things, then you would have been entitled to have gun ownership. But you did do those things, so, you know, with that in place, we have to protect society as a whole. And if that means restricting someone's access to guns, then that's what it means. So I agree with that. Prohibiting high-capacity magazines that allow shooters to hurt dozens of people without even to having to reload. I don't really know whether or not I agree with that. I think the reason why I think in America you cannot apply total gun control laws is because you have so many guns out there already, and your criminals have access to guns already. So if your criminals have access to guns, then in my mind it's only logical, only fair, only reasonable, only safe to allow your citizens to have guns. Not all of them, but a lot of them, so that they can protect one another. And I think that argument that I've just portrayed there, or relayed, stands up in regards to the types of weapons and such as this, the capacity of the magazines. If your criminals have got these high capacity magazines, then shouldn't the citizens have that too? Maybe I'm wrong. I might well be wrong in that regard. But to me, I think that the citizens ought to be able to protect themselves against whatever artillery the criminals have, and the other people have, those with mental issues. If someone's going to be walking around with guns with certain attributes, well, you need your citizens to be able to counter those guns with certain attributes. So I'm presuming, and perhaps incorrectly, that allowing normal citizens to have high capacity magazines will assist them in the defending against bad elements. But perhaps my reasoning is wrong. Perhaps a Glock 9mm can perfectly adequately defend against a high capacity magazine rifle type of thing. I know that I've not articulated that perfectly. In any case, I'm going to wrap things up here at this point, guys. I will be making a few more videos throughout the course of the day, so please stick around. If you think I've done a half decent job, please do like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for your time.